What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode, bringing you a special Saturday episode where we're going to talk about Kyle Lowry and what the Raptors should do. And more importantly, we're going to actually be posing 7 trade ideas for Kyle Lowry this offseason. As we know, he's an unrestricted free agent, but because of how much money he wants, which is a 2-year, $50 million contract, not a lot of teams can take on that level of salary. In fact, I believe the Miami Heat and the Knicks are two of the teams that could wiggle enough room to make a push for Lowry, but I'm going to be posing 7 trade ideas that helps a little bit with the cap, gets the Raptors back some young assets, and there are a few goals here in mind. Number 1 is get Lowry to a team that's going to be playing in the playoffs. Another one is to get back the best possible young asset from that team that's actually realistic. And the last thing, and most important, is that we're making an assumption here that Lowry signs, like I said, a 2-year, $50 million contract, and that the Raptors actually get a tangible play in return, not draft capital. So without further ado, let's talk about the teams that we're going to be discussing today. So the big 3 are contenders who are interested in Lowry in the first place last year during the trade deadline, which were the Lakers, Heat, and Sixers. And then there's 4 of the teams I think could potentially be interested given their current situation. It's going to be the Boston Celtics, the Dallas Mavericks, the New York Knicks, and the Indiana Pacers. As for the LA Clippers, I just don't think they have enough assets to make a trade, so they're not going to be included in today's video. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So the LA Lakers, that's the first team, obviously. This is going to be a sign and trade, and it's going to be dependent on a few assumptions here. Number 1 is that Schroeder gets signed to something near a 3-year, $60 million contract, which I think seems to be about right, or something in that range. And the trade is Schroeder and Talen Horton-Tucker for Kyle Lowry. And for the Lakers, they get a point guard that can be reliable in the playoffs, can give them both sides of the ball, and obviously is an identity guy. And next to LeBron and Anthony Davis, I think that team is an instant favorite for the NBA title next season if they aren't already without Lowry. And for the Raptors, you get a young prospect in THT, and you get a point guard in Schroeder who can help run the offense a little bit, and you could potentially flip if he starts to play well, or even you could use him in the playoffs. He's a solid player, a good role guy. He's proven he can do it. So I actually like the fit there with him. And I feel like that'd be a great move for Toronto to consider because THT has potential as a young wing who's shown the ability to score off the dribble. He can shoot the ball. He can play defense too. He's got long arms. So I really like him as a long-term prospect, and that's a big reason why I think the Raptors should make this trade to go a little bit more youthful. And then also you can get a guy as a backup off the bench for Pascal Siakam next season. The next one is the Miami Heat. And essentially the trade is Tyler Hero and salary fill for Kyle Lowry. And you might be thinking, oh, last year they didn't want to trade Tyler Hero. He was an untouchable. Things have changed, right? We saw what happened in the playoffs. And apparently, according to a source I saw, if you look at like league alerts, you look at some of these pages, I don't remember the exact reporter who said this, but there's a 75% chance that the Heat end up trading Tyler Hero this offseason, and the Raptors would be coming in and buying low on him because he's a player with true potential. He can fill the role as a young player with promise at the point guard position, and he would automatically be put into that 3-man rotation with Van Vliet and Malachi Flynn and whoever else they may end up playing. Jalen Harris, I don't know who else at the guard position is going to get a ton of minutes, but that seems to be like your young nucleus that you're rolling with, and I think Tyler Hero would be a perfect fit. He's got a great personality, great energy, great vibe to him. I think the off-court stuff is an issue right now, but if he goes to Toronto, I think that could help fix it a little bit, given the cold will maybe shake him up a little bit. Another assumption is that they re-sign and trade all their assets to fill the salary. Maybe you could use Oladipo as a salary filler, and the Raptors could take a flyer on him. Let's remember they got him for a second-round pick, so that's essentially equivalent to getting a second-round pick attached to this, except for you actually get an asset, or Iguodala and Ariza if they re-sign them and trade them. that also works as well. The next one is the Sixers, right? And this trade is simple as well. Tyrese Maxey plus cap fill, and that cap fill would be re-signing Danny Green and trading George Hill as well to get Kyle Lowry in that backcourt. He'd be huge. I think that this is a good trade for Toronto. You could even maybe do a Ben Simmons type package as well, but I've talked a lot about those. So let's go younger. Let's go Tyrese Maxey, a guard who can shoot, and you get a couple other vets who you can flip. George Hill would actually probably play. Danny Green could play as well as guys to fill minutes in there. But I think overall, you're really looking at the piece of Tyrese Maxey and thinking this guy's going to really be a potential star in the league. If you've watched him play, he's a really great young asset, a player with so much confidence. He was playing in the playoffs this year. He was balling out. So I think I'd love to see him on Toronto. And for the Sixers, they get a guy who can help them win now, which is clearly their issue, who can space it around Embiid. And maybe instead of trading Ben Simmons and making him the scapegoat, you add Lowry, who can play more with the ball in his hands and give Ben Simmons different opportunities out there on the court. And as we know, with Kyle Lowry, he gets bigger guys paid. So I think he would help Ben Simmons look good. The next trade's the Celtics. And for the Celtics, it would be a package of Al Horford, who they just picked up, and then a couple younger assets who, you might not think is like sexy names, but Aaron Nesmith and Grant Williams for Lowry. So those three back for Lowry. I think Nesmith has shown some defensive versatility and is a good young player in the league. And Grant Williams is a guy I like out of Texas Tech as well. A player who can help with at the small ball 5 position. He can rebound. He's a big body, and he's very versatile too. We saw him switch on to Van Vliet, block a shot in Game 7 of the 2020 NBA Eastern Conference Semis. I'm not going to remind you guys of that, even though I already said it. But that's like one of the kind of things he can do, right? He's really versatile. He's a good player. And Nesmith, another young guy. Then they get Kyle Lowry to help win now because Tatum and Brown didn't make the playoffs this year. Obviously, they lost in the play-in tournament, but they want a guy like Lowry. He's got guts. They saw him. They went head-to-head against him, and they know what he's like. I think Brad Stevens will look at that now that he's their GM and think, this is the guy I want on my team, and I don't think you're asking too much for Al Horford, Nesmith, and Grant Williams. Al Horford was just a trade piece given the fact that they didn't want Kemba anymore and that there was all the bad blood in that locker room with Kemba, and obviously the injuries were a problem too. The next one's the Dallas Mavericks, and the Mavericks would just be straight up Porzingis for Lowry, and this would only happen if Masai Ujiri was high on Porzingis because his salary is so much. It'd be a huge dent because you'd be signing him all the way till 2024 because he signed a 5-year, $160 million contract in 2019. So he's got an absolutely massive contract, and the only way this trade works is if he sees Porzingis as a future All-Star. Otherwise, you would not go for this. And for the Mavs, they would be super happy with this trade because Porzingis has been pretty bad for what he's being paid, and Lowry would be an ultimate replacement as a guy next to Luka Doncic who can actually handle the ball and give him some time off ball, run the offense when he's on the bench as well. Run the offense when he's on the bench as well. So I think he'd be a great fit. The next one is the Knicks. It'd be Mitchell Robinson and cap fill. The Knicks right now have a lot of cap holds. And once again, I'm not an expert on how the cap works, but I do believe that they're going to have the flexibility to make a trade with the Raptors, where the Raptors will get a trade exception back in return, and they'll get a guy like Mitchell Robinson, a young guy who can play good in the pick and roll. He's a lob threat, high riser. He can block a lot of shots. He just has an injury history, which is one of the concerns, but I actually really like him as a prospect still. I think he's young, and Nerlens Noel in New York has taken that number one role. So the loss of Mitchell Robinson wouldn't be big for the Knicks, given he didn't even really play. And they get to add Kyle Lowry to the mix, a guy who can feed Randle the ball, help him in that pick and pop, which obviously Randle can play given his shooting ability, and a guy who can ultimately rise to the occasion in the playoffs and help Julius Randle play better, because we saw what happened in the playoffs this year. He kind of choked it away, and they lost in 5 to the Atlanta Hawks. I think they want to be better next year, and by adding Lowry, they ultimately become a better team right away. The last one is the Indiana Pacers, and as we know, the Pacers have been a team that have been stuck in that mediocrity level for a long time. They've obviously collected a ton of assets, but I think it's time to move away from the Turner Sabonis experiment and put Lowry in there, get a guy, veteran leader, who can help them win this year because there's a lot of pressure on this team to perform. We saw Nate Bjorkgren become the scapegoat and get fired because they didn't make the playoffs, even though they had a ton of injuries. But the trade would essentially be Lowry for Miles Turner and Aaron Holiday and cap filler if they need it. And Miles Turner and Aaron Holiday are the guys who I think are the key pieces there. You get a young wing, a young center, and then Jeremy Lamb is the guy I said as a cap fill. Doesn't get much minutes there anyway. Then they get Kyle Lowry in the mix, a guy who can obviously stretch the floor, feed Sabonis in the pick and roll, pick and pop, whatever they end up doing, attack the paint, get open looks for shooters. And then I think the lineup of Lowry, Brogdon, LeVert, Warren, and Sabonis would be a really solid team in the Eastern Conference specifically, and they could see themselves making the second round with that type of talent on the roster if Karis LeVert continues to become the player that he's expected to be. And then I think for the Raptors, you get a much-needed rebounder, rim protector, who can defend. I've already talked about the benefits of Miles Turner, and I know a lot of people don't like him, and that's fair, but I think he's got some potential there. So those are the 7 trades. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know which trades you like, don't like. Roast me if you want, doesn't matter. But I would like to hear you guys rank these trades or maybe propose your own as well. And I'll take a look in the comments and, maybe I'll have a reaction video to some of your posts as well. So thank you guys for listening once again. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. We hit 800 subscribers earlier this week, so I'm pretty happy with that. We're already on pace to get to 900 soon. And our goal before the start of next season is 1,000. So share this with your friends. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening as usual. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.